Hello and welcome back to another Player 2 review discussion. And it's been a little while, actually. We've had a few other faces popping on the show in recent entries. But once again, I'm joined by Player 2 legend, Editor-in-Chief, Matt Hewson. How are you, mate?
Well, mate, it might be the last one for a while, too, before I fall off the face of the internet.
Yeah, I can stop blowing smoke for a little while and get some others involved. And we have. Go check out some recent episodes of our review discussions where you can go check out the likes of Bryce DeWitt from the House of Mario and some others to be, you'll see soon enough, that are going to be coming on board to talk about some other cool titles in the near future. But today, for anyone who's listening podcast services, we are talking about Crysis Remastered, or the Crysis Trilogy Remastered. I didn't spend a lot of time with Crysis back in the day, mostly because I wasn't a PC guy, and of course the whole story about Crysis in the first place, like I couldn't even just dip my toe in and just see what it was all about because you'd need a super high-end rig and all that. So like, can it run Crysis, all that sort of thing. And things started to change. Obviously, they made their way towards consoles. Crysis 2 and 3 popped up there. You then eventually got a kind of a port style thing of the original that popped up on the consoles as well. But they've bundled all three of them together. They've been remastered. They're on the last gen, current gen, whatever we want to call it at this point. We seem to be in this murky territory. Yep. PS4, Xbox One, vintage. And what are you thinking of your time with the trilogy so far?
It's a lot to say about three games.
This episode's not going to be 3 times as long as usual just because we're covering 3.
Yeah. You know, I'm enjoying it. I really enjoy Crysis. There's not really a lot of games that scratch Crysis's particular itch. Very story heavy. A lot of freedom in how you play the game, in that you can choose stealth, you can choose action, and the game kind of caters and adjusts to how you want to play it really well. So it's really fun to go back. There's just not been a lot of great single player shooters lately, I don't think. So it's making my time with Crysis much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean,
than it possibly would have been if we'd saturated. Yeah.
I mean, there's been Doom. You get the occasional Call of Duty campaign that might be a little bit of a standout. I mean, I was a bit taken by the Modern Warfare kind of reboot from the other year. Halo could be good.
I'm hoping Halo will be good.
We
but
hope so.
Really,
you're right. Like we don't get many of them. So when one pops up, you take a good hard look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been cool to kind of get in myself.
It's funny though. Crysis, for all its heritage as the system melting game, it's rough now. Like it's a rough experience now, and it's very much a team that I think is working out their tool set as far as gameplay goes. For the first 2/3 of that game, it feels like training.
And then it really pops off towards the end, right?
Yeah. So, and then there's this. I mean, it's an old game. Let's spoil it. The aliens come. Once the aliens come, the shit hits the fan, and it becomes this like hell-bent ride to the end that you just can't stop playing. But up until that point, it gets quite I don't know, monotonous, I guess.
Yeah.
And once those aliens come in, which are obviously essential to the second and third game, and it's where the stories carry on for, but it becomes a lot of fun, and I think that's where they found their feet.
They found their groove, and they took off from there.
Yeah, and they kind of went down that fantastical route instead of being just another military shooter.
Yeah.
Even if it had some like sci-fi elements, it was still just military at that point.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Actually, we should disclose early on in this thing how much of these we've played. Obviously, there's 3 games in this package here. The first game, the original Crysis Remastered, did actually come out last year.
Yeah,
I think it was last year. Whilst 2 and 3 have kind of been bundled into the trilogy here. I personally have messed around with 1 and 2. I haven't gotten as far as finishing 2 yet, but I'm a fair way through it. What about you?
So of the remasters, I've finished Crysis 1. I'm about 2/3 through 2, and about 3 hours into 3. I thought I'd jump in and check it out. Now, in saying that, I reviewed 3 when it originally came out. I've finished it then, and have finished 2 previously, so I know the drill. So I'm just revisiting, really.
Yep. No, that's awesome to hear. And are they, like, with your memories?
Yeah.
I mean, we always think about, this is what I imagine it looking like, and then you go back and look at some of the screenshots and you go, ooh. I think a lot of people had that moment when they replayed Crash when the Insane Trilogy came out. And this is not quite that, but how does the the visual overhaul hold up compared to what you recall?
Crysis 3, man. Like, Crysis 2 is good looking, don't get me wrong. Crysis 1 looks a bit rough now.
Yeah, some of the textures are a little bit
and
flat
the people
basic.
themselves, like the scenery is very good, but the people themselves are a bit bland, and it's a bit rough. Crysis 2 is a big step forward. As it was a 360 gen game, I think it benefited a lot from the 4K resolution
Yep.
and all those updates. And it's a good looking game, but 3, it is just mind blowing how good that game still looks. Like at 4K 60 frames, that is a stunning game.
Well,
Any which way you put it.
We see that a little bit with some of those games because Crysis 3 was kind of towards the tail end of that generation. We are seeing that a little bit with a few of those games of that period, the 2011, 12, 13 sort of period, specifically kind of 12 and 13, and games that popped up in that period just before the PS4 and Xbox One emerged. The likes of The Last of Us, for example, or even GTA and those sort of things. Like they really pop off now. Will GTA do so again when it's remastered once again? I don't think we'll see any sort of significant jump there. But when you're seeing these for the first time and they're kind of resurfacing, it's actually, and it's not. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but it actually kind of shows there's not an enormous jump there.
No. Well, I think
it's great.
Crytek and CryEngine has a really good reputation for being amazing looking.
Yeah, it was ahead of the curve for its time.
It was miles ahead, especially the CryEngine 3, which was Crysis 3. I had a brand new, like, $3,000 PC at the time that came out, and it crippled my system. It just busted it.
I had to take on the world, and it just goes.
Yeah, and the first scene it opens up with in 3 is in the rain. And at that point, I had never seen video game rain look so good, and it still does now. But all that extra action on screen just crippled frame rates, something horrid. So playing that in 60 frames the other day was a blast because I'd never done that before.
Right.
But
I look forward to making it that far then.
Yeah. It's literally the first scene of number 3. So it's just stunning how the water and the rain interacts, and yeah, it's a really good technical achievement, and it makes me kind of sad that Crytek haven't continued making these single player shooters. Now I know their story at the end of 3, it kind of wraps up in a nice neat bow, but when has that stopped a developer?
Exactly. No, there's always one little loophole that you can just pull that string and off you go again, and we see it happen all the time in film and TV and games. So I don't know. I think it's just that the studio itself has been in a bit of turmoil over the years, so I think that's possibly the main reason that we've not seen anything since. Now, I can't remember who developed these remasters. I think was it Saber? Saber Interactive had a bit to do with it. So who knows? Obviously, being under that umbrella these days, and of Coach Media and the Embracer Group, they're throwing money around left, right, and center. So. And just continuing to buy teams while they're at it. So they could pick up the right team. They could have the right people there already to be working on this. We've seen a little bit of that in recent years with Embracer, where they've put out a remaster of something or maybe multiple remasters to make a then sequel possible.
Yep.
So fingers crossed.
Hopefully.
Just a side note, fingers crossed that means good news for Kingdoms of Amalur. But anyway.
I think you don't buy
see a similar
properties.
thing here.
Yeah, I think they're testing the waters to see what the appetite's like.
Yeah.
And really, they're games that a lot of people kind of missed because of their PC heritage.
Yeah.
Certainly,
the console space.
Came to the consoles, but a lot of people, I think, kind of felt that they didn't jump in because they thought they were missing out something by the first game, which you're not. It explains it pretty well, and really, the first game's story boils down to 20 minutes that the aliens invaded.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing about the first one, and it's why we keep saying but can it run Crysis, is because it was all about how the game looked. Really, like it was a
glorified tech demo.
Yeah. So when Crysis 2 and 3 came along, you weren't missing anything because through the story or anything like that, really, outside of what you just summarized there, 20 minutes of stuff that you'd YouTube and move on. It was all about the technical stuff, and you're more than covered jumping into Crysis 2 and 3 just by nature of the fact that it's the next title and it's bigger and better and more beautiful. Like that's fine. So
2 and 3 play well together. I would strongly recommend at least finishing 2 before you jump into 3.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you might be a bit lost as to how things turn out, um, as to why someone that's dead is not. But
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm pretty happy just personally kind of trucking along through them at the moment because
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't really, like I dabbled around with I think 2 when it first came out. I'm sure if I pop over to look over the shelf here, I'm pretty sure Crysis 2 or 3 or something like that sitting on the
yeah,
shelf. But yeah, I just kind of dabbled with them and moved on. I think it was just one of those time and place things, and then a little bit of that what we've just discussed that
yeah,
we've ultimately broken down that whole idea that I haven't played the original Crysis, so maybe I'll wait for one day them to bring it across, which they did, but then the moment was gone.
yeah, yeah,
So this has been great to be able to go back and try them out and see what they're all about. And yeah, certainly the first one is I can see how it was so impactful at the time, but it certainly wasn't because of the narrative. It was or
no,
even
no,
necessarily the gameplay. Like the
no.
gameplay
It's
was cool.
very,
There's some cool things what they've got going.
and they've really refined that in 2 and 3.
Yeah,
By using the suit systems really well, like the ability to switch between armor and cloaking with the press of a button. It creates really dynamic gameplay and encounters. You can go invisible and catch your breath, and recharge your health and dive back in, or you can
yeah,
sneak around and stab people. It's a really really well thought out and balanced system, and the weaponry kind of in number 2 really matches that, whereas the
yeah,
weapons in number 1 were very generic, army weapons.
yeah. Get out your AK and do the job.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that sort of
there's your
thing. So
handgun. Pop a few rounds there, and it's not overly exciting until it is towards the end. But
yeah, yeah, that's pretty much it. But with 2 and 3, and then 3 becomes this almost predator simulator, because like I don't think that if they were to simply reskin it and say it was a predator game, you could run with that, because
yeah, okay,
you get a bow and arrow that doesn't. So usually in Crisis, if you use a gun while you're cloaked, the cloak turns off.
yep.
The bow and arrow doesn't.
Oh,
So yeah, you
that's
become
appealing.
this ultimate stalking predator. And because you've got the super jumps, you can use height to your advantage and stalk people below you really well, and it gives you this massive
I can
power
get around that.
fantasy.
I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
get
it's
right
it's
around that.
really good. 3 is the best game in the series without doubt, and it was really, really like it really took me, but way back then, and I jumped in and
Yeah.
played 3 hours, and I'm right back in. I'm kind of like, oh, I've got to go back and finish 2 before I continue, but it's
But you've got
so
that
good.
luxury again. You know what happens, so you're able to bounce
Yeah,
around
yeah,
and do what you need to do for the content side of things, and then just
yeah,
kick back
but
in and enjoy the way you want to.
damn, it's just so good just to stalk all these people, and they all start getting freaked out, because all of a sudden they look around and someone's got an arrow in their head and they don't know where it's come from, and all the
Oh,
enemies
I
start
like those
wigging
systems.
out. Yeah,
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 like the
it's
Batman Arkham style treatment.
that's it, and they start panicking and running around, and it makes them easier to pick off because they kind of spread out, or they might come together as a group, and you've got to change your tactics. So the AI works really well with it. It's very good. Number 3, I think
I'm
one and
keen to get there.
two were like real learning points. Two was where first one was a tech demo. Two was where they created a game, and 3 was where they polished that game.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's really exciting for me to kind of get
yeah,
there and actually finish this thing off. Don't know when I'll find the time with the million plates that we're spinning that we can't really talk about right now, but
yeah.
um, I'm really excited to kind of get there and finish that one off. Then that's really promising, and I guess has me really hopeful that they do revisit it, because you're right. Your point from before, like those top tier single player FPSs don't really exist much. I mean, I don't want to wander too much into speculatory stuff about a Crisis 4 and what that would entail, but I mean, do you think there's enough in this franchise that they could get away with just a single player
Absolutely.
title? Do you think we need to do you think for it to be viable for Embracer or whoever we want,
Yeah.
the million umbrellas under them, do we need to see multiplayer, that sort of thing? Do we think it could work?
The second and third games had multiplayer originally.
Yeah, right.
And they were quite a lot of fun. There was like a kind of asymmetrical mode way back when, before that was a popular thing, and one person had the nanosuit and the others were just normal soldiers in a team trying to track
Yep.
down. That was in number 3. So you had the bow and arrow and the nanosuit where you could go invisible, or you were a member of a normal soldier that had to track him down and fight him. So there was cool little things like
There is
that.
that Predator mode again then.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it was a Predator game. It really is. I think there could be both. I think possibly to get a high quality single player shooter in this day and age, you kind of do need some sort of multiplayer component for longevity.
Keeps the money coming in.
Yeah, and I could see something really interesting done with that sci-fi setting too. There's no reason a horde mode, for example, like 4 nanosuits.
Oh,
You know,
that'd be
you
cool.
know,
I'm
that'd
instantly
be
thinking
awesome.
a Gears style horde mode. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't even gotten to experience the level of mechanics that you're talking about yet. With again the bow and arrow and all those sorts of things. Like
Yeah, absolutely. I think a horde mode with 4 nanosuit soldiers, that'd be unreal. There's definitely room for the story to go because the nanosuits are the real, I guess,
the
main
star.
star
Yeah.
throughout the consistency, and there are story reasons for that. And because a lot of people haven't played it, I'm not going to spoil them. Um, but they become the kind of star of the show. So, what happens 30 years down the track after the end of 3? Someone finds an unused nanosuit,
And
jumps
off we go
in,
again.
and off we go again. So, there's plenty of room there to take the story, and I think I'd love to see another one. And as long as, but the thing with Crysis, if they're going to do another Crysis, it has to be bleeding edge. Like
Oh,
it
yeah.
built its name on being bleeding edge. It has to do that again.
Yeah, which I guess kind of prompts the question: are we talking PC only, or do we see ourselves a PS5 and Xbox Series sort of skew at the same time?
I think that's how you do it. You do the Series X, the PS5, and the PC. I mean, these days, I think it's easier to be bleeding edge because of things like DLS
Yeah,
stuff
DLSS and all
from
those sort of things. Yep.
and all those things that kind of this background magic wizardry that Nvidia and AMD are doing that can improve these things. And the AMD version's coming to the Xbox. I'm not sure if it's coming to PlayStation. It should do though because they're both using AMD chips.
Yeah.
So it would make sense for it to come there, and then that gives programmers this ability to push as hard as they can without sacrificing frame rates. So I think they could do it with the consoles absolutely, and financially it needs to be,
Yeah.
but they need a backer.
Yeah. Look,
That-
that's the trick.
Yeah, the original game was self-published. The next two were EA
Yeah.
originally.
And I mean,
so-
good on EA. They didn't butcher them.
No, they didn't. They were just publishers in that
Yeah.
point. They weren't. So Crytek was a third-party studio.
Yeah, they
under
didn't
EA.
own the rights or anything like
Yeah.
that.
So I think they need that again. They need that big boy pushing them. So
And Embracer could be that.
absolutely they could be, or it could be that Microsoft, for example, comes in and says, "Hey, we want you to do this. Here's some money. Go ahead, PC, Xbox,
Make it a time exclusive. Yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing. But it does need, because of the type of game it is. It needs that big heavy hitter with a big wallet behind it. I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, from what I've experienced so far, I'd be inclined to agree. Any other thoughts about the game at all? It is a more straightforward sort of thing. Again, we're talking about remasters. It is a single player fair. The multiplayer is not present here in the trilogy
in the
remaster.
remasters.
So it is kind of a clearer, more defined prospect and project here for people when they're picking it up. But yeah, any final thoughts at all?
It's seriously good value. It's like $70. I bought it. It was like $70 on the Xbox store.
And they are accommodating too if you do already own.
Yeah, and they're
the
dropping it
original
by
remaster?
30% if you have the original one.
Not 33, the dodgy bastards, but anyway.
No. I think it's already at a reduced price
Yeah,
because
it
of
is.
the first 2 weeks or whatever it is. But yeah, it's quality package. They're games that they mightn't have done as much to the games themselves to remaster them as some others done, but that's just a testament to how good the technology was when it was
time.
built. So like I was showing Amy last night Crysis 3 and she couldn't get over that it was a game from 8 years ago. It's just unbelievable.
Crysis 3 was 2013. Is that from the conversation before that was 2013? Right.
2013, yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. So 8 years ago for that, and it is, it could easily pass as a late gen PS4 game, and a late gen Xbox One game.
That tells you. I mean, considering these games that we're playing currently are in fact PS4, so we don't have native next gen.
No, the
versions.
Xbox version unlocks the frame rate
Yeah.
through Xbox's frame rate boost.
Yeah.
But that's the only kind of next gen enhancements they get.
So they are still technically last gen titles. So
Yeah.
that's it. That says a hell of a lot that they hold up so well.
Yeah.
Who knows what's to come for the franchise in the future? I'm hopeful now that I'm actually finally properly giving them some time. I'm really hopeful, especially if Crysis 3 is the best, and I've still got that ahead of me. So
absolutely, you'll have a blast. And anyone that's played it knows what I mean when it's a Predator game. You just feel like the Predator.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap things up there. Be sure to keep your eyes out on the website for some written thoughts. I will get to that. So keep your eyes out for that really, really soon. Matt, thanks for coming aboard and talking about Crysis Remastered Trilogy.
Anytime, mate. Anytime. Like I said, it could be the last time for a while.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what's happening? We'll eye off what possibilities and opportunities we have ahead of us in the future. But because there's still a hell of a lot of big stuff coming down the pipeline for the remainder of this year. And if not, we'll just rope a whole bunch of people in and make a whole bunch of Nickelback content for you.
No.
I hate Nickelback. What? Like I've got to stop doing this to myself just to hang shit on you. I feel like it's worth it. Anyway, if you enjoyed what you saw, please be sure to like, share, subscribe. All those buttons are below. If you're on a podcast service, make sure to share it around. Slap 5 stars if you're on the Patch podcast feed there. As you would always make sure we mention, Matt, make sure to visit the website, player2.net.au. We've got a whole bunch of awesome stuff going on there. But where can people find you specifically on Twitter?
You can find me at Huso81, and I'm generally there swearing a lot at inept politicians. But yeah, if you just want video game stuff, it's player2.au.
Paul James Games for me. That was Crysis Remastered Trilogy. I hope everyone's considering picking it up after this conversation if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time.
Get you in.